Thank you so much for joining me on the show, Winston. But I'd
Thank you
like
for
to
having
get
me.
a sense from you when you look through this IMF consultation. What's the first thing that hits you?
Well, really, the first thing that hit me is that it doesn't tell us anything that we don't inherently know. Once you start to see oil prices go down as they have, and you now see what is the general slowdown we expect to happen across global economies, thanks to what's happening in China, it just stands to reason that we would see a significant slowdown, all things being equal. But when you now start to add a couple of the issues that were raised that are endemic to us, I actually think we might struggle to hit those numbers that IMF has up there.
Yeah, it speaks a lot about what we're doing to meet our diversification targets. We're looking at the FIRS talking about trying to get 17% tax to GDP ratio by 2023. How feasible do you think that is?
See, to get that number, it is feasible, but the only problem, or the only place where you'll find quarrel with the FIRS is they seem to be digging more in the exact same place rather than expanding the tax base. And if you continue to dig more in that place, it will create a disincentive for certain people to do certain things. And at some point, you make tax avoidance a profitable endeavor. So if the system can start to expand to increase the tax base, and I must say this, everybody thinks that they're overtaxed, especially the people that are in the markets or what have you. And in all honesty, they probably are right. But here's the difference. Most of the taxes they pay are not official taxes. They pay levies to their market group. If you're driving Okada, someone is collecting 100 naira from you. All those things effectively are taxes on those people that are not coming into the government coffers. So the first thing that needs to be doing is all these taxes need to be cleaned up and brought into a standard place. And from there, you can really make tax planning and start to deliver services to those people that pay. And I think you'll start to have better compliance and getting to that number. I think we can get higher than that number, but we need to do the hard work.
Yeah, by next week we should be expecting the GDP figures from the NBS and the World Bank here, giving this forecast of 2% coming in there, and then looking at inflation, how that has trended so far since August last year when the borders were closed. I'd like to get a sense from you how you see this growth projection and what you make of this growth projection and inflation.
And so on the inflation side, inflation, it is what it is. I think inflation is going to stay in the low double digits, hopefully, as long as no additional shocks hit the system. On the GDP, yeah, we've slowed down. As long as oil prices stay where they are, and they probably will go down at least on the short term. There will be a rebound, hopefully, once this issue in China gets taken care of. But until then, we will continue to see a slowdown. And I must say, I think the border is a red herring. I think closing the border has raised cost in a number of things. But if you look across the entire system, I think we have other structural problems that just need to be handled better.
Yeah, because on the inflation, the central bank at the last MPC meeting was talking about the fact that if inflation around above 12% is inimical to growth, and then it calls for concern, it's growth retarding. Do you see any likely response at the next Monetary Policy Committee meeting on this?
Well, so yes, it is growth retarding, but if you also start to fight just inflation, the way you do that is you increase interest rates, you kind of reduce the money supply, and that also has another issue on growth. So the central bank has a very, very tough job to do. They want to manage inflation, and they need to accelerate growth from the really, really low numbers we have. For an economy like ours, we should be looking at 5-6% growth, and we are nowhere close to that. And if you want to fight inflation and do that at the same time, it's going to be a very, very difficult, if not impossible, job. So the one thing I'll say is I wouldn't expect them to take any major. I wouldn't expect them to make any major moves in any one direction, but it's for them to hit that double bullseye. I don't see it.
Yeah, because the IMF was also talking about the fact that high fiscal deficit is also complicating monetary policy, and I'd like to get what your thoughts on that as well.
Oh, so you go again. So the fiscal deficit, government is the largest investor for all intensive purposes in the economy, and you don't have enough revenue to make that. That's what builds your deficit. Your oil prices continue to go up; those deficits continue to widen. The one way you can close the deficit very, very quickly locally is to devalue your currency, and absolutely nobody wants that. So again, we are in a very, very tough position that requires us to make hard choices. And unfortunately, we have consistently made the easier choice. We've made the choice that has solved the problem in the 3 to 6 month range, rather than making the hard choices that give us the structural changes that put us on a clearly different trajectory where hopefully our problems are different.
Yeah, because also, still going back to the old diversification conversation here, talking about the fact that IMF is pointing to the fact that we still have weak non-oil revenue mobilization still in the economy, and still quite a lot to be done. We had a conversation on another show earlier, Beyond Market, talking about efficiencies at the ports, challenges that we're seeing there so far. Any respite?
Yeah, so here's the thing. The number one limiter in growth in all our sector is really power. And we really need to figure out how do we solve the power problem. The simplest way to solve the power problem would actually be to push it more and more into the public space. And to push it more and more into the public space, you need the government to take their hands off it. Well, here's what that means. That means you need tariffs that are representative of the costs, the true cost that it requires to run these places. And that means higher tariffs. People are not in a hurry to get that, but if we don't have power, the non-oil part of the country is not looking to grow anytime soon. With the issues at the ports, that is a travesty. The fact that so much of our entire trade comes through one port that it's almost impossible to get to is, I don't even know how we justify what has been happening in the port, and that is one problem that is easy to solve and should be solved quickly, and it's just a question of the people in charge not really going out and bite the bullet and getting it done.
Yeah, still quite a lot of points to go through here, but I'm afraid that's all we have time for. But then definitely was a conversation we'll definitely have again. We're scheduled to have an interview with the IMF country representative to Nigeria, and definitely we'll be putting a lot of all this to him.
That'll be an interesting one to watch.
Thank you so much for your time today. I've been speaking to Winston Osuchukwu. He's the co-founder of Trans-Sahara Incorporated.